Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really getting into something special. Not just a movie review, but a deep look at a whole moment, a true crime event that became the 1975 classic Dog Day Afternoon.
Yeah, it's a fascinating one.
We've got a bunch of sources lined up. There's IMDb for the basics, a pretty interesting Reddit thread about how progressive the film was or wasn't.
Oh, yeah, that should be good.
Wikipedia, of course, a movie location site, which is kind of cool, an Avenue magazine piece on the real robbery.
Really digging into the facts there.
Insights from the director, Sidney Lumet, himself from a PBS interview, and even an article looking at Al Pacino's acting technique for this role.
So, a real mix. Facts, opinions, behind-the-scenes stuff.
Exactly. The mission is, well, to figure out how this acclaimed crime drama got made, its connection to that real event, and, why it still hits so hard today.
It's a great case study, really, how one messy, real-life event transforms into art and how we still talk about it. We've got all these different angles to look at it from.
For sure. So let's start at the beginning. Where did the idea for a movie like this even come from?
Well, the absolute core of it is that real attempted robbery. It happened at a Chase Manhattan Bank in Brooklyn back in August '72.
Right.
Frank Pearson wrote the screenplay, actually won an Oscar for it, and he drew heavily from a Life magazine article called The Boys in the Bank.
Ah, okay, a magazine piece.
Yeah, by P.F. Kluge and Thomas More. But IMDb also mentions there might be an uncredited book source by Leslie Waller, too. So the story was kind of filtering through different journalistic takes.
Interesting. So multiple accounts shaping the narrative. And who are the key players behind the camera bringing it all together?
The main man was the director, Sidney Lumet, just a master. And he had Martin Bregman and Martin Elfand producing. Lumet's style, that kind of gritty realism he's known for.
Yeah, definitely.
That was absolutely crucial here. We'll get into that more, I'm sure.
Okay, so let's rewind to that actual day, August 1972. What exactly went down at that bank in Brooklyn? Can you paint a picture for us?
Okay, so it's August 22nd, 1972. John Wojciech, Salvatore Natural, they called him Sal, and another guy, Robert Westenberg. They walk into this Chase branch.
Ready to rob it.
That was the plan. According to Wikipedia, in that Avenue magazine article, they thought a big armored truck delivery, maybe $150,000, maybe $200,000, was coming around 3:30 in the afternoon.
Okay, so they had a target time.
They did, but they got there at 3 p.m., and the punchline is the truck had already been there way earlier, like 11 a.m.
Oh, no!
Yeah, so the money they were counting on, gone. They ended up finding only about $29,000.
Still a chunk of change, but...
But nothing like what they planned for. And, things escalated quickly. Cops arrived. Westenberg, the third guy, he just bolted.
He got out.
Yeah, he fled. Left Wojciech and Sal stuck inside. And suddenly, it's not just a robbery anymore. It's a full-blown hostage situation.
Hey.
All because of that initial huge miscalculation.
Wow, just like that, it spirals. So what was driving them? What was the reason behind trying to pull off this robbery in the first place?
The reason Wojciech always gave, and the one that's most famous, was that he needed money for sex reassignment surgery for his partner, Elizabeth Eden.
Right, I've heard that.
Eden was assigned male at birth, born Ernest Aaron. The Avenue magazine piece talks about how they met at the San Gennaro Festival in '71, and, within months, they had a wedding ceremony.
So a very personal, powerful motive.
Seems like it. Wojciech said later in a prison interview that Eden was deeply unhappy, had even attempted suicide because she didn't want to live as a man.
That's heavy.
Yeah. He apparently tried to get the money together for her birthday on the 19th. Failed. Then Eden overdosed on the Monday. Wojciech visited her in the hospital and then robbed the bank the very next day, the Tuesday.
So extreme desperation pushing him.
That's the narrative. But there's always a but, isn't there?
Usually.
An investigative journalist named Arthur Bell, he dug around and suggested things might be, a bit murkier. He hinted at possible connections Wojciech had with a pornographer, Mike Umbers, maybe even the Gambino crime family.
Seriously, mob ties.
Bell suggested it, implying that maybe the surgery money was like a key part of the story, but perhaps not the only thing going on. It adds this layer of ambiguity, what was really driving him.
Right. That definitely complicates the picture. A mix of love, desperation, and maybe something darker. So once they're trapped inside, hostages taken. What were their demands? How did the negotiations go?
Well, initially, according to Wikipedia, their demands were pretty straightforward. They wanted Elizabeth Eden released from the hospital where she was recovering.
Okay.
They wanted food hamburgers and Coke, specifically. Classic.
Yeah. Comfort food under pressure.
And then, the big one, transport to JFK Airport, and a plane to get them, and the hostages unharmed, somewhere safe.
The getaway plan.
Exactly. And it was during all this tension, the crowd's gathering outside, the police standoff.
Yeah.
That's when Sonny Pacino playing Wojciech yells out, "Attica, Attica."
The famous line.
Yeah, and it just connected.
Mm.
The Attica prison riot was still fresh, very brutal. That shout tapped into this anti-authoritarian feeling in the air. The crowd loved it.
A really spontaneous, electric moment.
Totally. And then later on, Leon Shermer arrives on the scene. That's the film's name for Elizabeth Eden, played by Chris Sarandon.
So Leon actually came to the bank.
Yes. And Leon's presence kind of confirmed the surgery motive publicly, but it also brought out other complexities, like the fact that Sonny had kids with his estranged wife, Angie.
Adding more layers to the drama.
Definitely. And there's this really heartbreaking phone call where Leon, who, remember, had just attempted suicide and was fragile, refused to go along with Sonny and Sal's escape plan.
Wow. Refused to join them.
Yeah. Told him over the phone. It just highlights how tangled and emotional everything was.
Intense pressure cooker. So how did it all finally end? Couldn't go on forever.
No, it couldn't. As it dragged on into the night, the FBI took charge. Agent Sheldon, specifically. And the mood shifted. Fewer concessions. Tactics got harder.
Right. The feds step in.
Although there was a moment when the bank manager got sick, and they did allow a doctor in. But Sonny seemed to sense things were closing in. He actually dictated his will to one of the hostages. Made sure his life insurance money would go to Angie, his wife, and also specifically set aside money for Leon's surgery.
Even then, thinking about it.
Yeah, quite poignant. Then the climax moved to JFK Airport. They put Sonny, Sal, and the last hostages in a limo, driven by Agent Murphy.
Okay, heading for the plane.
But during the drive, Agent Murphy kept telling Sal, point your gun up, point it at the roof. Repeatedly.
Setting something up.
Seems like it. As they were waiting near the plane, Sal actually let one of the hostages go. She gave him her rosary beads. A strange little moment of connection.
Oh.
And then, bam, it happened fast. Agent Sheldon grabbed Sonny's weapon, and at the same time, Agent Murphy, who had a revolver hidden in his armrest, shot Sal.
Shot him dead.
Instantly. Right in the head. Sonny was arrested immediately. It was a swift, brutal end to the whole thing.
Just like that. A really stark conclusion. What happened to the key players afterwards?
Well, Sonny, John Wojciech, he got sentenced to 20 years in prison.
Huh.
His wife, Angie, and their kids, they apparently struggled quite a bit, ended up on welfare.
Tough aftermath for them.
Yeah. And Leon, Elizabeth Eden, after surviving all that trauma, went on to live as a woman in New York City. So, the consequences spread out, affecting everyone deeply long after that one day.
A heavy price paid all around. Okay, let's shift gears to the making of the film itself. Those behind-the-scenes details sound pretty wild.
Well, they really are. And they show how dedicated City Lumet was to getting that authentic feel. They filmed mostly in Brooklyn in the fall of '74.
Right, in the city.
Yep. But interestingly, the inside of the bank, that wasn't a real bank. They actually built a set inside an old garage in Flatbush.
A garage, really?
Yeah, but for the outside shots, the street scenes with the crowds and cops, they used a real street Prospect Park West between 17th and 18th. Apparently, the building they used for the bank exterior is now like a private apartment block.
Huh. Imagine living there, knowing that.
Right. A little piece of film history.
So Lumet wanted this specific atmosphere, right? That dog day afternoon feeling. How did he create that?
He had this idea right from the start.
Yeah.
He wanted to convey, quote, a hot, boring day, a dog day afternoon. He did it with this opening montage showing just New York.
Like everyday life.
Exactly.
So,
Traffic,
yeah.
bridges, beaches, different neighborhoods, just the city buzzing along.
Mm-hmm.
And then the camera finally lands on the bank. And originally, Lumet had that whole sequence silent.
No music.
Initially, no, to really emphasize the ordinary before the chaos erupts. But later, in editing, he added Elton John's Amarina.
Oh, yeah, I remember that playing from the car radio.
Yeah, the getaway car. It was kind of an inspired choice, adds this slightly weird, unexpected vibe, shows Lumet's intuition making that call after the fact. And he also decided against a traditional score for the whole film.
No background music.
Very little. To keep it feeling real, almost like a documentary.
That makes sense. And building the bank set in a garage, how did that help with the filming inside?
It gave them incredible freedom. It wasn't a cramped, real bank. It was a set with movable walls
Yeah.
built inside this old auto workshop.
Ah, so they could shift things around.
Exactly. Allowed them to place cameras wherever they needed, use long lenses, get shots from different angles without disrupting the actors, really enhance that claustrophobic, you're stuck in there with them feeling.
Clever.
And get this, for some shots, the camera operators used roller skates and wheelchairs to get these smooth, kind of panoramic movements, trying to mimic that newsreel feel.
Roller skates, that's commitment.
Totally. They mostly used the available light inside, just boosting it a bit with fluorescent lamps to get the right exposure. Very gritty.
And they filmed at night too, right? That must have been tough.
Yeah, 7 nights of filming. And the temperature dropped, so the actors actually had to put ice in their mouths between takes so you wouldn't see their breath on camera.
Wow, that level of detail.
Absolutely. For the big night exterior scenes, they used the powerful lights from emergency vehicles like 7,500-watt lamps to light everything up. All about that realism.
Incredible dedication. And Lumet was known for letting actors find their own way a bit, wasn't he? With improvisation.
Oh, definitely. Frank Pearson's script was the foundation, no doubt. But Lumet created this environment where improv could happen. He actually built stuff they came up with during rehearsals right into the scene.
So it felt more natural.
Exactly. He wanted it to sound like real people talking, under pressure. He even encouraged actors to wear their own clothes, skip the heavy makeup.
Keep it raw.
Totally. Those intense phone calls Sonny has.
Yeah.
With his wife, Angie, and then with Leon, they filmed those back to back.
Really building the intensity.
Yeah, and apparently Pacino wore like a black velvet mask over his eyes when he was doing them to really isolate himself and focus. Used 2 cameras to capture it all.
Intense. What about the airport climax? Any specific stories there?
Well, first off, filming at a major airport like JFK wasn't easy. They actually got help from Senator Jacob Javits to negotiate access with the Port Authority.
Needed some political clout.
Seems like it. And then, that final brutal moment when Sal is shot, Lumet made a really specific choice there. He cut immediately to a long shot, showing the whole scene.
Instead of a close-up.
Right. And then he had John Cazale, the actor playing Sal, physically rolled out on a stretcher. This was apparently so Pacino could react completely spontaneously, authentically, to seeing his friend taken away like that.
Wow. Setting up the actor's real reaction.
Yeah. Lumet was thinking constantly about how to capture genuine emotion. He even considered using actual news footage of Wojciech and Eden's real wedding ceremony.
They filmed their wedding.
It was broadcast on local TV, yeah. But Lumet decided against using it in the movie. He worried it might make the film feel campy, he said, and take away from the seriousness.
Interesting choice. Protecting the tone. It sounds like Lumet was just orchestrating everything perfectly.
Yeah.
And Pacino's performance as Sonny, it's legendary. What do our sources say about how he approached it?
Well, the article on his acting really points to his background in method acting, from his time at the Actors Studio with Lee Strasberg.
Right, digging deep emotionally.
Exactly. It's all about emotional recall, really immersing yourself completely in the character's mindset and feelings. And his Sonny is just a prime example of that. He conveys such raw emotion, so much vulnerability. It's all right there on the surface.
You really feel his desperation.
Totally. And his voice, he goes from these quiet, intense whispers to just exploding. His timing, the pauses he uses, it creates this incredibly compelling, very human character.
And that Attica line we mentioned, it was improvised.
That's right. Not in the script. Just Pacino in the moment, feeling the energy of the scene and the crowd. It's a perfect example of the kind of spontaneity Lumet encouraged.
Shows the trust between them.
Absolutely. It sounds like they had a really strong collaborative relationship. And you can't forget the rest of the cast. John Cazale as Sal is just heartbreakingly good.
Oh, amazing. Every film he was in.
Right. And Charles Durning as the negotiator cop, Sergeant Moretti, so solid. And Chris Sarandon as Leon. Really groundbreaking performance for its time. They all clicked perfectly.
It truly felt like an ensemble. So the film comes out in '75. How did people react back then? How's it seen now?
It was a smash hit with critics right away. They praised the natural acting, especially Pacino, calling his style bravura. They loved the realism, that weird mix of tension and dark comedy.
The gut-level human comedy.
Exactly. And Lumet's direction got huge praise. It did really well at the Oscars, too. Won for Best Original Screenplay for Frank Pearson.
Nice.
And Pacino, Lumet, and Chris Sarandon all got nominated, plus a Best Picture nomination. Pretty major recognition.
Definitely. And what about its lasting impact, its legacy?
It's seen as really significant. People often call it an anti-authoritarian film. Coming out after Vietnam and Watergate, it tapped into that feeling of questioning authority, siding with the underdog maybe?
Reflected the times.
For sure. And as we touched on, it was really pioneering in having a bisexual male lead character. That was huge for mainstream American film back then.
A big step for representation.
Absolutely. So much so that in 2009, the Library of Congress selected it for the National Film Registry, called it culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. High praise.
Wow, it deserves it.
Yeah, and it always pops up on those AFI lists. 100 thrills, 100 movie quotes for Attica. Attica Premiere Magazine ranked Pacino's performance as one of the all-time greats. The Editors Guild even listed it as one of the best edited films ever.
Just acclaimed across the board.
Pretty much. And its influence keeps showing up. There's a Hong Kong film loosely based on it, People's Hero. References in The Simpsons, other TV shows constantly quote the Attica line. A couple of the original actors even reprised their roles briefly in Spike Lee's Inside Man.
Huh. No way. That's cool. But it wasn't all smooth sailing, right? There were some controversies connected to the real people involved.
That's right. Adapting true stories is always tricky territory. Wolfowitz's actual wife, Carmen, she sued. She felt the movie portrayed her really negatively. Yeah, and apparently Wojtowicz himself wasn't happy with how she was depicted either. Even the screenwriter, Frank Pearson, had some issues later on.
With his own film.
Yeah, he apparently wasn't thrilled with some of the casting choices, and he felt the marketing pushed the true story angle a bit too hard, considering the dramatic liberties they had to take.
Right, the line between fact and fiction.
Exactly. And P.F. Kluge, one of the authors of that original Life article, he felt the film was powerful, but maybe stayed a bit on the surface, didn't quite capture all the deeper complexities of Wojtowicz and the situation.
Interesting. It shows how many different perspectives there can be on the same event, especially when it becomes art.
Definitely. It's a reminder that behind the movie, there were real people whose lives were turned upside down.
Okay, let's talk about that Reddit discussion you mentioned, the idea of the film being progressive. What were people saying there?
Yeah, it was a really interesting thread. The main point was how the film handled LGBTQ plus themes, specifically Sonny's relationship with Leon and the motive for the robbery. Many saw it as incredibly progressive for 1975.
Ahead of its time, kind of.
That was the argument. Showing that kind of empathy, portraying the robbery as essentially an act of queer love, especially so soon after Stonewall, that felt radical for a major Hollywood film.
Yeah, you didn't see that often.
Right. And some users pointed out that Sonny, as a gay or bisexual character, was allowed a lot more depth and individuality than you often saw, even compared to some modern films.
That's a good point.
The discussion also touched on a subtle moment of racism. Remember when the cops initially assumed the black hostage must be one of the robbers?
Oh, yeah. Briefly.
So the film was touching on multiple social issues. But there was a debate, too.
It wasn't unanimous.
No. Some people argued that maybe the 70s, with a whole post-60s free love vibe, were just different. Maybe the film felt more cutting edge or just of its time back then, rather than actively progressive in the way we'd frame it now.
Ah, context matter.
Exactly. And there was this interesting tangent about whether the 70s were actually, in some ways, more open than the 80s. Some suggested the rise of social conservatism, maybe the AIDS crisis, led to a kind of backlash later on, slowing down progress in representation.
Huh. That's a fascinating perspective, thinking about progress not always being linear.
Yeah, it really makes you think about how we view past eras and how a film's perceived message can change depending on when you're watching it.
It's a great example of how a film lives on and gets reevaluated.
For sure. It shows that what feels progressive is always shifting, and art plays a complex role in reflecting and sometimes challenging those shifts.
Okay, so wrapping up our deep dive here on Dog Day Afternoon, what are the main things we should walk away with?
Well, I think Dog Day Afternoon is just this incredibly powerful mix. It's a true crime thriller, absolutely gripping on that level. But it's also this deeply human story about complex, flawed people pushed to extremes.
The performances are key.
Absolutely. Pacino's performance is legendary, just raw and unforgettable. And Lumet's direction, that commitment to realism, makes it feel so immediate, even now. It captures a specific time and place, early 70s New York, so vividly.
Yeah, it feels like a time capsule.
It does. But the themes, desperation, love, identity, clashing with authority, they still resonate. It forces you to think about crime, about who we consider heroes or villains, and how media represents marginalized people. It's still sparking conversations today.
A truly remarkable film that sticks with you. All right, on that note, let's leave you, our listeners, with a final thought to mull over.
Okay.
Considering this potent blend in Dog Day Afternoon, the true crime roots, the social commentary woven in, that intense personal drama, how does watching it make you think differently or maybe just confirm your ideas about what drives people to desperation or even what constitutes heroism in messed up situations?
Good question.
And looking back at the whole story, the real event, the making of the film, how it was received then and now, what part of it surprises you the most? Or what aspect feels particularly relevant, maybe uncomfortably so, in our world today? Something to chew on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.